Bob and Sue have spent the last 30 years focusing on paying off their house. So although that is great, unfortunately, they feel like they haven't saved enough for retirement. In this video, we're going to look at a case study for Bob and Sue who are 65 and 67 years old. They've saved $350,000 for retirement. They both have Social Security benefits because they both have a working history, but they really want to know how realistic is their retirement, how much monthly income can they sustainably have, and if it's at all possible, is there going to be anything left over for them when they get older in retirement and might need to take care of long-term care expenses. So without any further ado, let's get right into this video. I talk with people all over the country, and a pretty common theme that I see for folks about to retire is they've prioritized paying off their house, which, just to be totally clear, I know there's a lot of people that say that's a bad idea and that you could have made more money investing in the stock market and all that. Well, you know what? Maybe that's true in some instances and maybe it's not, but the truth is having a paid off home is an excellent thing to have once you retire. So Bob and Sue, they're in a situation where most of their extra savings went towards paying off the house, and so now they're in their mid-60s and they've saved up $350,000. So relatively speaking, compared to a typical American, they're actually in pretty good shape, but they want to be able to do some things in retirement. They know that they only need to cover just their basic expenses. They need about $5,000 a month, but they'd like, if possible, to have a little bit extra to be able to do some things, to travel and maybe even help their kids a little bit if it's possible. And so with that all in mind, we're looking at their retirement plan. So you can see on the screen in front of us, they've got $350,000 saved. $250,000 of that is in an IRA, in Bob's IRA, and $100,000 is in an IRA that Sue has saved up over the years. Now they're looking to retire in January. So between now and then, we're going to plan on maybe a little bit of growth happens, but you know, over a couple of months, you just never know what'll happen with the market. So we want to use some pretty conservative assumptions here as far as growth. When we look at their cash flow and their overall income plan, let's look at that overview to give you a sense of realistically what is their retirement plan looking like. So this is the retirement overview screen, and you can see that maybe by January, maybe they've made about an extra $5,000 between now and once they're actually going to retire. Based on that amount of savings, we're looking at a monthly retirement paycheck of $6,660 a month. Now, what does that actually mean? What we're saying is between their Social Security benefits and the money saved in retirement, their total monthly income would be that amount, and that's after taxes. So with this number, you gotta understand here, we've already paid for taxes, so these are actual dollars hitting their checking account that are spendable, ready to go every single month. We've already paid the tax bill. So with that, you might ask, okay, taking out $6,600 a month from retirement accounts, that seems like maybe a little too aggressive of a distribution plan. How is that possibly sustainable? Well, it all goes into how are they claiming their Social Security. So let's step back. Let's look at all of the cash flow, where it's coming from their portfolio and from Social Security. What is their claiming strategy? And then let's address the other concern they have about being able to have money left over for when they get later on in life. And Sue's mom was in a care facility for about 2 years, and they saw just how expensive that was. And so they want to make sure, hey, if that needs to be something that one of us needs to do, or both of us, is there going to be any money available to pay for something like that? So let's look at the cash flows first, and then let's go to the projections to look at how their portfolio, how their money is sustained and growing over time. So first, looking at the cash flows, where is that $6,600 a month coming from? So on the screen in front of us, you're going to see this chart, and we've got three colors. We've got a light blue, a dark blue, and this yellow here. The dark blue, this is actually Sue's Social Security benefit. Now, if she waits until full retirement age, which for her, she was born in 1960, that's going to be $2,600 a month. That's her benefit based off of what she's found on Social Security, on the Social Security website. Now, for Bob, his benefit's projected to be a little bit higher, $3,000 a month. So really what we're trying to do is figure out kind of what's the right way for them to claim their benefit, both of their benefits. They don't have to claim them at the same time, and so kind of what would make the most sense over the long term. So you can see that early on in retirement, here we are starting in January of 2026, you can see their income. So here on the left-hand side, we've got a monthly income amount, and along the bottom, we're going from 2026 all the way out to 2055. So they're planning for a long lifetime. Of course, when you're planning for retirement, you never know how long you're going to live. And so unless you've got some type of insight, or I don't even know, based on the health history of your family, or maybe a current medical condition where maybe you have a better sense of how long you think it would be realistic to live. Man, as I'm saying this is all very morbid, thinking about when you're going to pass away, but It's part of retirement planning. You kind of have to put some thought into when you think that might happen. So coming back to 2026, where is that $6,600 a month coming from? For this plan, what I actually did is I looked at different Social Security claiming strategies. And what I found is that there was about a $200,000 lifetime benefit difference if they claimed their benefit later versus both of them claiming it right away. And so what ended up making the most sense for this couple was for Sue to claim her benefit right away. So she'd be just over 65 years old, which means that she would get a slightly reduced benefit, but that makes it possible that early in retirement, they don't have to spend down as much of that portfolio, which remember, we want to save some of that for later on in retirement if possible, to cover long-term care expenses if that comes up. So early on in retirement, you can see that of that monthly income, they'd be pulling out about $4,600 a month from the portfolio, and about $2,290 would be coming from Sue's reduced Social Security benefit. And that's going to go on here for about 3 years until Bob turns 70. Now, what's interesting is because Bob has a larger benefit, if we can delay his until age 70, he's actually going to get an 8% per year benefit increase, and that'll be permanent for the rest of his life. And even if he passes away early, that benefit that's larger actually gets transferred to Sue, and she'll be able to keep Bob's larger benefit. So it actually creates a lot more financial security for the rest of their lives by him delaying a couple of years. This is especially beneficial when you have a situation where husband and wife or both members of the household qualify for a benefit. If, for example, only one of them did, then delaying can be maybe not as good of a plan. But for them, where they have two benefits, then this actually ends up making a lot of sense. So you can see that once we get to when Bob is age 70 here in January of 2029, you can see that at that point, Bob is, instead of getting $3,000 a month, he's actually getting $3,800 a month from Social Security. Now, Sue's benefit, she's had some cost of living adjustments between now and then. So her benefit is now $2,440 a month. And now they're only pulling out less than $1,000 a month from the portfolio, about $944 a month. And that goes on for a few years until basically, because of cost of living adjustments, their monthly income is then fully taken care of by Social Security. Now you might ask, okay, Mark, you just said that they want to have some money left over for later on in life. So what happened? Did they spend all of that money and now there's nothing? Well, let's look at another side. So basically what we first established here is that they have enough, do they have enough money saved? And with their Social Security benefit, is that enough to cover their monthly income needs? It looks like it definitely is. So $5,000 a month is all they need, but this plan gives them about an extra $1,600 a month flexibility that they could use to spend on travel or for whatever else they'd like. They can spend it. They don't have to spend it, but they've got that extra financial flexibility in their plan. So let's look out and look at a projection of their portfolio to see kind of where that ends up through time. So on the screen, we're looking at what's called a legacy projection. Legacy is just kind of a general term that refers to how much money you have at the end of your life. What is your legacy that you're passing on? But essentially, this chart gives us a range of what could happen, looking at what's happened historically. So essentially what we're doing is looking back through history and looking at different market environments, really good environments, really bad environments, to give us maybe a sense of what could possibly happen in the future. So you see these lines going through time, and you can see that as we're going through time, their portfolio, these numbers here on the screen are showing the value of their portfolio. It looks like within the first 5 years, because they're spending down more heavily from the portfolio, they're getting down to somewhere around maybe in the $200,000 range of their portfolio. But remember, once Bob's Social Security kicks in, they don't need to draw that much on the portfolio at all. And so then as we go through time, the portfolio starts to grow again. And this right here, this is what's called the median projection, which is basically saying what's most likely out of the good and the bad scenarios. If we take maybe what's a typical scenario, what's most likely is that by the time they pass away, and this plan is going out, let's see, more than 25, almost basically 30 years, it's showing that probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of $840,000 left over in their retirement savings. So what that means is, even though in the first few years they were spending quite a bit each month from the portfolio, because we've delayed Bob's Social Security benefit, and then that kind of really takes up the slack for their monthly income needs, eventually by the time they're later on in life, that portfolio balance is able to kind of continue to grow, and that's how we're able to end up with more than what they started with. You can see it in the worst case scenario, they're probably going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of $450,000, and then of course, if they're just really lucky and markets are very favorable, nothing's ever guaranteed, then it's possible they could have over $2 million, almost $3 million by the time that they get to this end point in life. Now, in the meantime, let's say that 20 or 25 years from now, they end up having to go into a care facility and they need some extra money from their retirement savings. Well, that's absolutely possible. So here, if we look out 25 years from now, the best case scenario, they've got about $1.3 million down to the worst case scenario, about $400,000. $400,000. That still gives them some extra financial wiggle room where they could draw down more of that retirement portfolio if they needed to cover long-term care expenses. And if you've had a parent or you know someone that's been in a care facility, and especially where one person is in a care facility and another person is at home, you kind of have to pay for both situations. The person living at home still has to pay utilities and, it has to buy groceries and take care of things. And then there's the expense of long-term care. So having this extra money kind of that we're planning on that being set aside is going to make a lot of sense for this retirement plan. So even if you're in a situation where you haven't saved as much as maybe you wish you had for retirement, you can see from this case study that somebody with relatively modest savings is still able to meet their living expenses and put together a plan that gives them financial security both now at the beginning of retirement and for the rest of their lives. So hopefully by going through this case study, this is giving you some good insight, hopefully some confidence, and maybe even some good ideas that you can apply to your own retirement situation. If you'd like some help going through your numbers, figuring out what's the best Social Security strategy, or even tax planning strategy to be able to keep as much of your money as possible, click on the link in the description and I'd be happy to sit down one-on-one with you for a free consultation to help you look at your own retirement plan and find a path going forward. So with all that in mind, I hope you have a great week and I will catch you next week in the next video.